So good afternoon, and thank you for dispelling our terrible fears that we had the 3 o'clock spot and nobody would show up for this conversation, so we're going to try to make it worth your while. I'm Joey Wise, the Chairman and Chief Ed Officer for Distinctive Schools, which is a charter school network in the city of Chicago, and I'm a recovering school superintendent, very interested in how we help save this nation through getting K-12 to work properly. So I think we were all enthused about jumping in on this particular topic. So a few ground rules. The session is being videotaped. So panelists will share a microphone, handheld, and when you lob in with questions or comments, agreements, disagreements, we'll hope that you'll wait for one of our ASU colleagues to bring the mic around and not speak before. We'd like to do about 60% this way, learn from experts who've been in the innovation, breaking down walls, trying to move the work to a better place for kids and educators, 60% this way, and maybe 40% coming back this way. And I'm going to try to take on the task of making it messy enough so that it's really fun, but not so messy that we don't get 60-40 coming this way. And I think we'll do typical panel conversation. Let's start with learning from the folks charged with bringing a point of view. And I'll kick it off this way before we ask Linda Clark and go this way through the table. So I had two interesting conversations today at this Innovation Summit. One was with Sarah and Linda as we were waiting to get into our room, and it mirrored this conversation I had with a new friend, Justin Serrano at Editure, this morning over breakfast. And so it's sort of, this is the big aha for me. So Innovation Conference, disruptors trying to get at the new work in a really great way. 1,200 of us closed off after that. Marry it with National School Boards Association and roughly the same numbers, mostly school board members and superintendents going to a national conference that's been robust for years. There probably aren't a dozen of us who went to both. And by the way, they sit on $750 billion. On this side, we're trying to move in and cause the money to be spent differently to get a better value for kids. And we have a few who are in the public service in these appointed positions, superintendent positions, other chief executive positions, trying to move innovation through this institution that does so much well and is so vulnerable in so many ways. So let's sort of use that as the lens for, wow, can we even get about this if we can't, right, Sarah, get in and start the collaboration. So Linda, why don't you kick us off with some comments and perspective here.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Linda Clark. I'm superintendent of Joint School District Number 2 in Idaho. We're the suburban district around Boise. Very rapidly growing district now, approaching 36,000 students. Have the unenviable distinction of being probably the lowest funded district in the nation, over 10,000. We had about $4,077 per student in our coming through our general fund this year. So we have some challenges there, but really have tried to be a leading edge district for many, many years. I've been 9 years in the superintendency and was the director of stuff in the job just before that, which is a really wonderful pathway because many of the things that we start when we're overseeing curriculum and instruction and whatnot die when another leader comes on. And so it was unique to be able to carry those on and expand them. We have been about knocking down walls, pushing boundaries. It is a very frustrating process in many ways for a public school system. We have continually butted heads up against state rules, state regs, State Board of Education, State Department of Education, all who have very well-defined rules and regulations for how schools should operate. So just the simple fact of starting magnet schools within a school system proved to be very challenging. The notion that you couldn't shuttle bus kids because it was outside the regular way of doing it. Or procurement issues to deal with how you purchase apps for tablets in a system that has very well-defined procurement issues. We are very fortunate to be one of the districts in the League of Innovative Schools where some of those issues are being addressed. But the work is hard. It is not for the faint of heart, but it's well worth it. I honestly believe that we have to change virtually everything about how education is delivered. We have to change virtually everything about the classrooms that you and I went to school in. And we're doing some of that work in Meridian, and be happy to talk about it as we go on.
Good. Manny?
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Emmanuel Scardo, the proud superintendent in Tucson, Arizona, Sunnyside School District. Just had a tremendous life experience over the last few weeks, but I won't go into that. But what I will go into is the important work we're faced with. And I think that's where Sunnyside, and let me just give you the demographics. We're 18,000 students, 90% low income, 90% Hispanic. We're probably competing with the funding numbers of 49th out of 50, about 4,700 students, 4,700 per student for our ADM. But in saying all that, I believe right now it's probably the most exciting time in education right now. The funding is people are talking about it. They're talking about technology. We are a district, grades 4 through 10, in 90% low income, that every day they take a computer home. We're a one-to-one district. We are revolutionizing the classroom. We are changing teaching and learning. And I absolutely agree. This is the time that everything has the opportunity to change. This is the time that people are talking to investors. Investors are talking to us. I think right now is probably the best time to talk about innovation. It's probably the most challenging time to talk about student achievement as it relates to the Common Core and standardized tests. But at the same time, it's probably the most exciting time where you can transform lives. And I think right now, across America, these conversations, these summit, and I happen to be one of those 12 that was at the school board meeting and here. And so I think right now, school boards are talking about it. School board members know they have to change. We have a lot of big partners right now that we work with in our district. I think the research is going to be emerging. Organizations like the League of Innovative Schools or Digital Promise is so cutting edge and exciting. We're one of those districts as well. We're also a Project Red district. But I think the most exciting thing is when we talk with different companies and we go as Tucson, Arizona, and we're presenting to LA, we're presenting to Chicago, because you know what they want to do? They want to go one-to-one. I mean, these big districts are talking, going one-to-one. So don't let anybody tell you, as I close, one-to-one is going to happen. It may take 6 more months. It may take 12 more months. But across this nation, access to technology, access to learning and changing the classroom is going to happen in the next 12 months.
Thanks. I'm Diane Tavner, and I actually am the CEO of a charter school network in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. We are small by comparison. We serve 1,600 students. We have 4 schools currently. We're high school, and plan to continue to open about 2 per year as we move forward. And I think where we fit in this landscape is we have a 10-year track record of doing an exceptionally good job of a kind of classic no excuses, high expectation model of getting every single student into college, and our aim for them to be successful there. And a couple years ago, when we saw our first data of kids having made it 4 years through college and now 6 this spring, the data came back and said 55% of our kids are going to graduate with a 4-year college degree, which, if you know the national statistics, that's impressive. But when you're the people who got into this work for 100%, it's nowhere where we want to be. And so we took a very successful charter network and said, we're going to go back at this and redesign to get to that 100%. And that launched us on a pathway to really think about leveraging technology to do 2 things. One, put the power of and control of learning in the hands of kids. The factory model schools that we have are very adult-directed and driven, and we think that that completely has to be turned upside down, and kids have to own and drive and empower their own learning. Number 1. And number 2, we have done an exceptional job of the really rich, deep cognitive skills and non-cognitive skills development of kids over the years, and we lacked a competency-based progression in a really heterogeneous environment. And so that had to be added to what we're doing, and in the process we've discovered that you literally have to redesign the entire school model. And so we can get into what innovation looks like from my opinion, but in our case it literally meant ripping down the school walls and tearing them out. We don't have walls anymore.
Okay. Sarah.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Shapiro. I'm the director of the League of Innovative Schools at Digital Promise. I'm proud that some of our league members are here. Excited to get to know you. So Digital Promise was created by Congress, launched by the White House, the current administration, to spur research and development in ed tech, but across the lifespan. The thing that we chose to start with was K-12, and we chose to do this through the League of Innovative Schools, which is a group of now 32 districts in 21 states that collectively serve 2.5 million kids. So the league members are New York City, Chicago, large urbans like that, and then small rural and suburban districts all over the country, including Sunnyside and Meridian. So we really think of the league as a place where these conversations that aren't happening, that we talked about at the beginning, are starting to happen. We're bringing together traditional public school districts, some charters, with researchers, with vendors, with ed tech startups, with large companies, with other thought partners in the ed tech space to really begin the conversation and actually do the work of breaking down the walls and bringing innovation into our schools. I feel lucky to work with the districts that we work with and to see the work that they're actually able to accomplish when they do think outside of the box and work and create partnerships with vendors, with researchers, and actually start to understand what they need in their schools and what's actually working for which groups of students. So I'm really excited to be here to see where this conversation goes.
So I heard from our experts, breakthrough, breakdown, one-to-one, invent, promises around technology for kids. What did it trigger for you? And by the way, if you get the mic first, or when you get the mic, if you just say who you are and where, what your affiliation is, that would be terrific. What did it trigger for you? Either a question for the panel or a comment that one of them might have triggered for you. We have no comments.
That's a lot of pressure.
Oh, we do have. We got a couple. Okay, good. We're going to pretend like it's 8 a.m., not 3 p.m., okay? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Vinay from Rares Innovations. We're an early stage edtech startup company. What was refreshing to look at is, finding people like you really looking for this technology where, we can actually pilot some of our products, because we are looking for people like you where we can at least see, are they really going to find traction? So thank you very much.
So let me just build on that. So maybe, how do we find people like you? How do we get in to innovate in these districts that are progressive, these schools that are progressive?
I'm going to put a plug for, if I could, our State Department and this kind of concept of innovation and finding districts. You take the State Department, you take a college, and you take school districts, and you hold some innovation summits like this. And you invite districts to come in and you say, because I think this is what's happening right now. Let's promote innovation, let's test it, let's pilot it. I think it has to be aligned. I know that sounds like a contradiction to innovation, but it really does. It has to be, what's the base we want, base knowledge. But I think right now you have to push that conversation about innovation, and then you pilot. And pilot's a bad word in research and school systems in the last 10 years because we got away from pilots. But we're back to them for innovation. So you don't call them pilots, you call them innovation. And I think right there, if you can align it, we probably have 5 innovation projects in our district alone. We align them, we don't take everybody, but I think that's what's so exciting right now, that the innovation's coming, the investment's coming, if you can bring the data together, but the partners have to be, to your point of procurement and to your point of bureaucracy, State Department, college, school district, the league, you bring those together and you find the perfect storm. And I mean that seriously, because it is a storm as people look at it and say, what are you doing? And then you ask the State Department, put the test results on hold. And I'm joking, but you want to do that. You want to be able to say those kind of things.
Right. So one big thing I got from that is innovate at the regional and local level, do these kinds of conferences to get Sarah, to your point, before the meeting started, to get collaboration going is what I heard. Linda?
I would just slightly disagree with one comment, and that is, I think you have to know the area. I work enough with superintendents around the country to know that not all of them come from states where the State Department is leading the way. And sometimes that is the roadblock. And so it's a matter of identifying innovative districts, and for districts to identify innovative teachers. Much of the work that we're doing now, about which I'm the most excited, is teacher-driven. And really, we're trying to honor that. Many teachers went out and found innovations on their own, got individual grants. We've honored that by offering district grants for them, and then identifying those among them who were the most innovative, the most cutting edge, and going to them and saying, well, how would you structure a 21st century school? And we now have a pilot around that. They started from the ground up, changed the furniture, changed the equipment. Those are exciting, dynamic classrooms. Not one of them would be in existence today if I had to involve the State Department and the university and whole systems. So I think while that may work in some places, the real trick is to know, your product. Now you need to find the right configuration, and it's going to differ from place to place.
Okay, this is good. Who's next? Yes, sir. Take the mic before you speak, if you don't mind.
Hi. So with all of these kind of ed tech innovations coming out, hundreds of new technologies and things like that, as a school leader or superintendent, how do you go about vetting which one of these that you want to pilot or even try out? Because it's both exciting as well as overwhelming. So, yeah, how do you go about vetting?
Diane.
To start, if you want. Just to maybe add on and start with that, we actually started with a user-based design process early on, and we worked with Google on that process. We put our entire organization through it. We actually brought real live kids in, imagine that, and asked them, in a user-based design process, what schools should look like going forward, and built a culture around that. And now we rapidly iterate on our processes. So what I would say is we've gotten relatively clear about what we're looking for in particular technologies and products. And maybe I'll be a little bit controversial and hopefully not too offensive and tell you we don't actually think your technology is innovative. We think it's a tool to use to innovate towards a model that is truly innovative and that really is the disruptive force that we need in education. Our firm belief is that the factory model school is not the school model we need going forward, and so we need to redesign the entire school. And we need a number of pieces of technology that will fit into that model in order to create a new model. And so we're actually pretty clear about what we need and what we're looking for. And so we kind of have that sense of what we're looking for. We do a good job of watching, everything that's out there and kind of looking what's coming on the market and talking with people. But I can tell you, we can generally tell within about 2 or 3 minutes if it's a conversation we're going to continue to have. And I'll echo a point Linda made on that. If you don't understand education or the education space, if you have to ask me, what the API is in California, I'm not going to have a conversation with you because you don't understand my space, and so I can't believe what you've created actually is going to be something that I can.
And to be fair, wouldn't that be the same thing if you were innovators in the healthcare space, in public safety space, in financial services space? Knowing the landscape in our space is just as important. And is it fair to say, and just because you went to school didn't make you an expert in our space? Like, we already got plenty of parents who think that, right?
Absolutely. And so what I would say is we're using a portfolio of technologies right now. Some are off the shelf from companies. Some are where we have very close partnerships with a company and we're literally developing together. And we're actually building our own in a case where there's nothing on the market and no one seems to be interested in building it. And so we've decided we've got to have it, and so we're going to do it ourselves.
Good. Next comment or question. Don't forget to remind us who you are and where you're affiliated. This, by the way, this is great rhythm. This is exactly what I think we're supposed to be doing here, right? Let's pass the mic down.
Can I go ahead? Just a very quick
Yes,
one.
sir.
My name is Eric Schneider. I'm Assistant Superintendent for Instruction in Minnetonka Public Schools, Minnesota. So I was in Linda's role prior, and I do that procurement work. And we're also a one-to-one district, as Manuel was talking about. One thing I was going to comment on that last question about how do you vet those innovations. We do a lot to develop a culture of innovation in our district, and we actually host. We use crowdsourcing software within our district, and so we run events, we stage events in the district, and through that process of crowdsourcing, we land on what are the innovations that the teachers are most excited about, then we start looking at the marketplace to see what solutions exist there. And so that's why I'm here today, to get a sense of that. But we really look to the classroom teachers first to see what are the problems that they want solved. And so I think, and we share those that playbook with other districts who are interested in that kind of work. And I think there's a real market for that within school districts, really developing that space for innovation in district. And I think for folks who are looking for contracts, that's something to watch for.
And so one of the linkages I made was we actually asked teachers, we actually asked kids. Oh my gosh, wow, good, keep going. Who are you and who you affiliated with? And
My name is Kathy Yates, and I'm with a company called Teachscape. We do teacher professional development. And I'm interested in your role as instructional leaders, what you see or what you may be thinking about with regard to innovative ways of attracting talent to the education profession and then preparing people for what is a rapidly changing landscape.
Sarah, you starting?
From the digital promise perspective, I can just speak quickly and then I'll pass it on to the practitioners. But we are doing a bunch of research across districts and within districts on basically how to develop what are the best teacher practices in these new digitally rich learning environments, and how can we identify them, and then how can we see if those practices are actually linked to increased student outcomes. So what we're trying to do is really understand the changing role of the teacher and then be able to help teacher preparation programs, district leaders, principals, and others actually identify talent based on those predictors of student success. So we are very focused on the teacher effectiveness part of this because we know that the teacher role is very different in these new types of learning environments. So we're thinking about that from the research perspective.
I guess I just have to quickly say three things as relates to the last two questions. One, the difference, and I have to disagree a little bit with my colleague, when you talk with teachers, you talk pilot. And it's wonderful and it's important, don't get me wrong. But when you talk systemic change, you talk district. And if we don't align this and you don't get the district alignment to the vision, you're going to struggle. You're going to have wonderful classroom teachers doing some wonderful things, but you're never going to see systemic change or outcomes, number one. Number two, and as stated, you have to create a culture of innovation. That sounds like an oxymoron of innovation should just occur, but it isn't. Right now, we are such a tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about, in terms of technology and in terms of the perfect storm. You can take both of those items, both in terms of funding, and we got to make it go faster, and secondly, tipping point of technology. Teachers are overwhelmed in their day-to-day jobs. So some of the heat seekers, as we used to call them, will do the pilots. But if you want really systemic change, it goes to your last point, is PD, professional development, the supporting the teacher in the classroom. And I would venture to say, if even though with the bureaucracy, and I truly agree with you, with state departments and colleges, those are tough nuts to crack sometimes. But if you don't crack them, you will never see systemic change. Doesn't mean you wait for them. It just means you try to crack them. And you try to bring them together with the State Department, the colleges, digital promise and research, and a superintendent, and you create that culture in the state of superintendents that want to run with it. And it all goes back to PD and coaching. The last thing I want to say, PD just doesn't happen. You have to have the infrastructure of coaches at the site level to help those teachers.
So before you make the comment about, hopefully about more talent, attracting talent and talent development, so I think, Manny, one of the things I thought I heard you say in there, with respect to your comment, is also if our school or our school district can be branded as innovative, that can be another way to bring the cool
Absolutely.
teachers, the top talent, the passion, et cetera, in, was one of the things I thought you said.
Absolutely. We're tech savvy, so we recruit on that brand, and we say, because that last thing I want to say, you know, this technology is going to change in 2 years. Whatever we're talking about right now, you guys know it. It's going to change in 2 years. So we buy our hardware, and the paradigm we talk about, it's consumable now. We don't talk about hardware lasting forever. It's consumable. It's going to change in 2 years, and we can train you to be tech savvy teacher and go find another job if you have to. But that's the recruitment. That's how we get them in.
Right. Linda.
Well, in direct response to your question, I'm now going to respectfully disagree with myself. And actually, I agree with him completely about districts having to be a part of that. But what I'm going to disagree with what I said is that there are some issues here which really do have to be statewide and engage legislators and state departments and all those folks. And the issues you raise are among those. We must change how teachers are viewed in this nation. We must change how teachers are paid. We must change how teachers are recruited into the university system. We must put in place a culture where the best and the brightest go into teaching. To do that, lots of things have to change that are beyond the purview of one superintendent or one school district. We are presently trying to at least begin that process in our state. But we are not going to get the best and the brightest when we pay them nothing and when we beat on them all the time. Just think for a moment about this whole issue of innovation and think back over the last 10 years of public schools in the United States. We have not lived in a culture where innovation really was respected. We have not lived in a culture where it was safe to try things. We've not lived in a culture where really teachers felt that they had the latitude to do things differently. We've lived in a cookie cutter culture where everyone was ranked and sorted by the least common denominator of proficiency. We need a system that is based on the growth and development of every single student. There are measures to do that. We've long been users of the MAP testing of NWEA. That's a tool to measure how well it's working. But in order to deliver instruction in that kind of way requires breaking down those walls that my colleagues have talked about. We need to get rid of the notion that because a youngster is 9 years old, he's in something called 4th grade all day. Maybe he needs to be having algebra. Maybe he needs help with reading. This notion of grade levels and cookie cutters and all of those kinds of things have to go away. But we have to start by creating a culture that invites those kind of changes.
So, Linda, what you're making me think about is this whole notion of attracting talent and keeping talent. And in part of my portfolio of work is training aspiring superintendents. And Linda, that's what you're making me think about differently. So we help superintendents think about the space between keeping the job and doing the job. You can spend the time keeping the job and not do anything and keep the job a long, long time. If you really do the job in this space, you may not keep it for a long time. Well, maybe that's the same for principals and teachers. And maybe you make it psychologically safe for me to actually do the job, which means innovate in the way we're all thinking, or we wouldn't have come to this conference. So that space between keeping the job and doing the job maybe applies to more than just superintendents and heads of schools and et cetera. So that might be part of it. Thanks. Good question. Who's next? These are really great.
Tim Lum with the Instruction. We as a vendor community are trying to create products that you all can use in schools. And obviously, in order to do that, we have to create some scale in the schools, and we have to be able to get more than a few teachers to use it. Pilots are great, but at some point, we want the adoption beyond that. So one of the things, I mean, we've touched a little bit on the professional development side, but very clearly, there has to be some expectation from your side about what we as a community are going to provide to your teachers so that they can effectively use the tools we produce. Can you talk a little bit about those expectations and what it is you expect from us as a community in terms of helping you to train your teachers?
I don't expect anything from you to train my teachers. That's probably not the answer you want. But I mean, I guess I would go back to the professional development and just say, I mean, my organization, my teachers have 40 days, that's 40 days of professional development a year built into their year. It's unheard of. Have for 10 years. We take it very, very seriously. Every single teacher has a personalized educator plan that, you know, where they set their goals. We figure out how to support them. It's tailored to them. It's a highly professional faculty. You know, 90+% have master's degrees. Most of them come from top tier colleges in the country. I mean, we've attracted the top talent. We've done everything right for 10 years. We've done all of our professional development in-house, literally, for 10 years, 40 days. Why? Teachers want to learn from teachers. They want to learn from people who they trust, who understand what they're doing, who you know, understand their context, who are dealing with the same kids. Like, that's who they want to learn from. They don't want, you know, drive-by, spray and pray type of PD. They want to learn from their colleagues. And so, and it's the best thing for the culture, because in our culture, everyone is good at something. no teacher's good at everything, but every teacher's good at something. And so what happens is what you're good at, you become the leader of, and you learn how to teach your peers and your colleagues. And then they get better at that, and everyone's teaching each other. And so that's the model for it. In terms of when we adopt technologies into, we're teachers. We know how to figure out how to teach each other that. And if we can't learn enough about the product in order to teach it to ourselves, then there's a problem. It's not going to get adopted. And so we want to actually have control over that. What I would say, my advice would be, I want more modular things. I don't want people coming to me and telling me, you're going to sell me this entire giant package that's going to solve all of my issues. It doesn't connect to or talk to anything else I'm doing, because I want to be able to pick and choose the pieces I need and fit it together in ways that I want to do it. And so it's unattractive to me when one of the pieces is you have to have our system, but you have to do these mandatory professional development days. I don't want it. You know, it doesn't fit. I want a modular approach where I can take what I need and fit it into the model that I'm trying to build and develop.
So Mike, you're making me think about one thing here in terms of how I think gets at the core of it. So I can't remember B school people, you know, the marketer Jeff, somebody crossing the chasm, remember, I can't call his last name right now, but anyway, he taught us the concept of early adopter and the champions inside the organization, and maybe those same teacher champions, if what Diane is saying is applicable across the vendor community, is those same champions at the teacher level might become those very trainers to take that solution you're providing, that product you're providing, and embed it better because they see those teachers every day they're learning from, might be one of the big ahas I heard in that exchange. Who else wants to address this?
I guess I just have to speak a little bit different from my context of public education. And I just have to say it. Well, I just have to say it. I just have to say it. My point right now is we don't have 40 days. We don't have the luxury of saying we need you. We don't attract the best and the brightest in this profession because of pay. Think about the pay of Arizona teachers, almost $32,000 beginning pay. So when you want to talk about bridging the digital divide, you have to talk about teachers, recruiting, training them, and this is where I would encourage you. And the part of training them and working with us, we have to accelerate their training. They have to have time for it. They're going to be coming at different entry points. And the one thing that I think too many of us think is that one size fits all. You got the elementary teacher, and even in the elementary teacher, you have preschool, pre-K, and then you have the 3, 4, 5 teacher. So you have two groups in there. Middle school teachers are middle school teachers in many subject areas, unfortunately, still standardized. And then high school is a huge, vast, big opportunity. But my point right now is if we don't find and understand that teachers are coming to us at some different avenues, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, we have to meet them anywhere, anytime, blended, and we have to encourage them. We have to give them different learning skills at those different entry points. So I think right now, the biggest mistake we can make is that teachers are going to jump at this. They don't have the time. Some of them have the interest, but it's got to meet them where they are, because that's our biggest challenge with technology. Now, the good news is they want it. They're going to learn if it can come at a good magic point, if you will.
So I'm getting from that, context matters a lot. And by the way, the marketer is Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm. I'm sorry, I just couldn't call the last name, but he really did teach me a lot about sort of early adopter and grabbing hold of those, especially in our profession. Who's next on this, or we want to move on? Next question. Okay, Mike, there we go.
Yeah, my name is Alex Kachatian. I'm with Reasoning Mind, and I want to challenge Dan a little bit and actually address the entire panel. I'm all in favor of modularity and being able to pick and choose when it comes to something that's really the school needs. But on top of that, there's a huge flood of things that are pushed to schools right now, especially with ed tech. There is all kinds of different things. And it's difficult really for teachers, not to mention administrators, to orient themselves in this flood of things that are coming on their schools. And in this country, we had an issue with coherence for a long time, even before EdTech, right? So our curricula is very often incoherent, and that's what research tells us. And with this flood, I think the risk of kind of diluting and losing coherence is increasing even more. So are you concerned with this? And if yes, how do you handle these kind of issues? How do you deal with this? Thank you.
So at Digital Promise, and we are very concerned with this, our superintendents are coming to us and saying we don't know what to do, what to buy, what to spend our scarce resources on. We don't know what works for which students and why. So we are we are doing research, we are doing pilots, and we are trying to figure out with our group of 32 school districts what's working, where, why, and starting to build a body of research so we can empirically say, these are the right kinds of tools to be using with these kinds of students in these contexts. So we're not just guessing at this, and we're not just getting, all of these, everybody on this panel, including me, we're pitched every day on something new. And to Diane's point, something that's going to transform children's lives, and we know that that's not the case. Digital Promise was founded as an ed tech organization, but we are not about the technology. We are about the technology done in the right way, because we know that a mediocre piece of technology implemented really well in a great culture can be very effective, and the best piece of technology, the best curriculum done poorly is just going to fail a whole grade, a whole district of students. So we are really trying to actually build the research and do a bunch of pilots through a platform we're building for our districts, which would act as a sort of virtual sandbox. So our districts could actually pilot tools together, see what's working, talk to each other about what's happening, and then start to actually collect the data on the back end to see why things are working or not. So I think, we are trying to help our districts sort through this flood of things coming, but it's really hard, and I think it's the toughest thing in this whole space right now.
So before Diane responds to that, so Alex, one of the things that maybe we need to think about, or what you're causing us to think about here, is coherence does matter. And so it sounds like, Diane, I hope that you'll respond to this, that if you've got enough instructional leadership savvy on your team, how do you test for coherence? Or how do you smart enough to know when you better go buy or borrow that from a vendor or an outside partner? I don't know if that adds color to it or makes Alex's comment murkier, but go for it.
No, I think that's exactly my point. Coherence is the most important thing. And so from my perspective at our schools, what we've done, we're focused in 4 areas. We believe kids need to really work on 4 things. 1, cognitive skills. These are represented in the Common Core. These are the big skills that go across all of the subject areas that are, being able to solve problems and communicate effectively, et cetera. Content, which is our sort of traditional knowledge, which I think is where, technology has kind of entered the space initially, at least, and probably is most effective there currently. And then there's non-cognitive skills. So these are the skills where kids have, self-management and regulation and goal setting and all of those things, which we know are critically important for their success in college in the future. And then we fundamentally believe kids have to have true experiences in life and accumulate these series of experiences. And so when I think about that, there is not an ed tech solution that is coherent across all 4 of those things. And that you can come in and say to me, here's a coherent approach to how you can fully educate your kids with this product. And so by definition, I've got to put different pieces together in order to create a coherent experience. And so what's troubling to me is when I get a product that says, we're going to teach your kids algebra. And, you've got to do this whole course, and it'll have the assessment built in, it'll have all this piece. Well, where do I fit the non-cognitive skills then? Where do I fit the experiential piece? And how do I slice that into my coherent school model and school day, which is all we focus on, is a coherent model. And so that's why I'm asking for the modularity, because if I'm doing a really good job in creating a really coherent schooling experience, it has a really robust, great teacher involved in it, and it has all these other pieces, and so the technology has to fit seamlessly into that, not try to take over and just do a piece of it.
Manny or Linda, would you add to it?
If I may, the assumption is there's been coherence. I go back to NCLB. In the last decade, all we've been doing is drill and kill and getting people ready for the test. I mean, let's be honest here. And so if you want to call that coherence in terms of cognitive or any scope and sequence, that's what we struggled with. We did it. There was some coherence to it, but it was very, very minimal in terms of challenging kids. I think right now the best opportunity is to look at coherence in the context of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And that's innovation. And if we can think and have our kids learn through innovation in those classrooms and our teachers teach there, they're going to come out with some better outcomes, I believe, than we did in the old days of NCLB. So I think right now, again, the optimist in me comes, one size is not going to fit all. We're going to see some different ed tech solutions and hardware. And I don't think there'll ever be the day, and I hope it never comes, that we're going to patent like we did the old days of textbooks and said these are textbook adoptions and we're going to go out there and tell you to buy these books. No, I think different communities of poor people, of kids, second language learners, of kids that learn differently are going to need different ed tech solutions. And I think different communities need to decide which ones they want to do. And the different teachers in those communities taught by those colleges and that local community are going to be those customers, because it isn't going to be one size fits all. We're going to change, and we're going to change at pace that we've never seen before in schools.
Linda?
You know, the reality of the world in public education today is that because of the financial crisis, school districts lost their so-called discretionary money. It was the first funding that went away. What is that? What do those kinds of funds fund? They fund professional development. We used to say textbooks, now we say content. Those kinds of things outside of salaries over which we have discretion. And if there's any money in those areas now, it's very limited. So the reality is school districts must be very savvy about how they spend those limited resources. We're going to look for content that's aligned to the standards, that's up to date, that's motivating and highly engaging. But if I had been, if I had been making this comment a lot of years ago when I was a very young principal, I would have said, you know, we go out and get pilots, we go out and find folks who have something that we might fit in, and we'd pilot 2 or 3 vendors and we'd choose the one that best fit. I have no interest in that. I'm looking for partners. I'm looking for partners to be on the ground with us, to look at this wide range of complexities we have, this huge span of abilities we have, and to work with us as we try to make students more active participants in their own education. The day of the sage on the stage is gone. I'm not interested in finding something that gives a teacher a book they can use. It's a different kind of environment, and we're looking for different kinds of partnerships. And they're not plentiful. They're few, and they're of highest quality.
Good. Luis?
This is Luis Alafuente with the Broad Foundation. Can I ask you guys, kind of maybe one at a time, where do you get your information? Where do you go to, we've been talking about this flood of products hitting the space, and you don't know necessarily what's going to be quality, what's not. It sounds like there's a lot of sort of speaking to other educators about it, but there's got to be sort of a first step in terms of where's the first place you go to get information, and then I'm sure you have to vet it from there. But
let me answer it. And first of all, you need to build a culture in your district of innovation and your champions. We have a tech executive team made up of about 10 people. 5 of them are here today because we live it and we breathe it, and they're all out there talking to people about innovation. So it's a whole culture. 2, we're a project-led district, so we work with those 20 districts on innovation and products, and we're a League of Innovative Schools. And we keep looking at it. And we, because we're tech savvy and we're one-to-one, we get a lot of people coming to us now. We sit on panels. We present all the time. We go to National School Board. So right now, those are how some of the things we learn.
I too have 2 teams that are focused on this. So my information team, my academics team, we're all, although the whole sort of senior exec team of the organization, I mean, we all read EdSurge every week. It's the first thing I read every Wednesday morning, like at 5 o'clock in the morning. The rest of the team reads a lot more than that. That's as much as I can do. But that's pretty good. And then we have a set of peers who are doing similar work, who we trust, and literally when we know we're looking for something, we push out to them and say who's working with who's heard of what, and we always tend to get something back. I try to actually push out and go and seek out the people I'm interested in working with. So I've taken that tact and hunted a couple CEOs down. You're excited when I do that because I'm a good salesperson for you if I adopt your
great.
product.
Sarah?
So I go to I read EdSurge too and things like that, but I go to our league superintendents when I first hear about a product or somebody comes to us and pitches us and it sounds really interesting, but I don't know anything about it and I don't know much more than what the pitch than the pitch and the promotional materials. I go to the league superintendents and I say, have you heard of this? Have you worked with them? What have your experiences been? But we are very, very focused at Digital Promise on actually making that data real and collecting it and seeing what our league superintendents are using, how they're using it, what the experiences have been, and actually linking data and student outcomes to the usage of those products. So right now it's calling Manny, it's calling Linda, it's sending out an email, but hopefully we will be formalizing that and putting that in a place where we don't have to do all of that legwork to actually figure out what we should be thinking about for a particular problem that districts are facing.
On the way back, National School Board now has a system of their highlighting best products. So they highlighted those right at National School Board with over 12,000 school board members. Some of the professional magazines of school leaders are highlighting best products. So there's a lot of people coming out there now giving a gold seal. So it does endorse something, and so we look at those things.
Linda, by the way, you're going to get the final word on all this.
Say
You're
what
in the
they
final
said,
word.
they pretty much covered that.
Okay, good. So we ran over time. I really appreciate this. You did dispel our worst fear that we wouldn't have an engaging, interesting audience. So thank you for that. And let me just say, if you don't have contact information for this great panel through the app or through the emails that went out, the roster, because you got in late to the game and you've got a business card you can come and pass around, we'll be glad to get the information back so you can keep the conversation going. But thank you for being a great 3 o'clock hour. We really appreciate it. And thank you, panelists. You were great.
Thank you.